the ISIS forces moved towards Baghdad, many of the weapons they took in the city of Mosul now are reported to cross the border into Syria. Our next guest is a first cousin of the Syrian leader, President Bashar al-Assad. Ribal Al-Assad is definitely not a supporter of his cousin, and he joins us now in the studio. Thanks very much indeed for joining us. First of all, your reaction to what is happening in Iraq and obviously, you know, the spillover into Syria.
Yes, of course. I've been warning for the past 3 years of, you know, the spillover from what's going on in Syria, because the West had decided to sit in the back and allow countries such as Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Turkey to take the lead, you know, into the Syrian crisis. And unfortunately, this has transformed from a peaceful uprising to an armed conflict. And unfortunately, as you know, countries such as Saudi and Qatar do not want to have democracy knocking on their door. So they went on backing only Islamist extremist groups in Syria. It could be the Muslim Brotherhood or the Salafis, Wahhabis, all those groups. And this is where we find ourselves today. And at the same time, they set up TV stations, you know, promoting hatred, sectarian hatred, religious hatred, violence, killing against minorities in Syria. The Grand Mufti of Saudi Arabia came out and said openly that we have to burn churches in the Middle East. You know, Qaradawi said, I call on jihad against all Shia and Alawites. So this has transformed from a peaceful uprising from people who are seeking democracy and peaceful change to a sectarian regional conflict.
Now let's just talk a little bit about what's happening in Iraq here, because Syrian President Bashar al-Assad, your cousin, is now reportedly claiming common cause with Iraqi Prime Minister Nouri al-Maliki, claiming that he's battling the same kind of radical elements that are fighting in Iraq. Is he right, or is Syria different from Iraq?
No, to be very honest, what he's saying is exactly what's happening today. It's very unfortunate because now the regime, it's so unfortunate that now the regime has the backing of the majority of the peaceful majority of Syrian people, not because they are with the regime. Everybody, of course, wants democracy, freedom, and human rights, but because they cannot see a viable alternative. Because now all the rebel-held areas, you know, it's supported. They're all flagged, the Al-Qaeda flags. They all are whipping people who are opening their shops on Fridays. Women are not allowed to see male doctors. You know, they are cutting people's heads off. This is not what the Syrian people want. Today, the Syrian people's priorities has changed. This is why you could see that people are so astonished that he has won the elections. Yes, of course they are. But I repeat, not because they are with the Syrian regime, but it's because they cannot see a better alternative.
Indeed. About 2 years ago, you said that he was out of his depth. Yes. But as the conflict and the crisis in Syria has deepened, and now it seems to be sort of spreading over, do you think that he's got more emboldened, and now, as you say, he's now got some sort of legitimacy for what he's doing?
Of course, because now, if you could see in Turkey, for example, Turkey, which was backing the al-Nusra and which went against the United States when the United States put al-Nusra, listed al-Nusra on the terrorist list. Now Turkey suddenly, after 3 years, they decided to also list al-Nusra as a terrorist group. But after what? We have groups now, jihadis coming from all over the world, from Europe, 3,000, from all, you know, all over the world. So it's nearly, you know, tens of thousands of jihadis. And it's becoming a danger not only to Syria and the region, but to the West, to the whole international, you know, community. If we heard back in August, you know, from former deputy you know, of the head of the CIA, Michael Morell, he said openly that now those jihadist groups in Syria are becoming the greatest danger on our national security.
If you'll just hold on there for a minute, we're going to cross over to President Obama right now, who's making some comments. Let's listen in. These pictures are raw. They're coming into us as you see them. We'll hopefully
get Tony Abbott, the Australian Prime Minister, who's...
Well, it seems to be frozen there for a minute, but we've still got Mr. Assad here. Just very quickly, as while we're sort of talking about the subject, ISIS have been fighting for a while in Syria without making much headway. I mean, let's face it. But in a lightning flash in Iraq, they've achieved some stunning successes. What's responsible for their victory in Iraq and not in Syria?
Because the international community had to know, first of all, that ISIS had started in in Iraq, and the people who made up ISIS are the people, the former soldiers of Saddam Hussein, the former leader who took off their clothes when there was de-Baathification, and when the army was told to get out, actually. And these are the same people who were fighting under Saddam Hussein, former soldiers who were fighting under Saddam Hussein. But now they had the chance, with the conflict in Syria, of getting arms from all over the Gulf states, from Turkey, trained arms. This is, I mean, complete nonsense when you hear other countries saying we are sending arms to vetted groups. How do you vet those groups? It's impossible. They tell you one day the Free Syrian Army, they're moderate soldiers. Next day you hear all the people from the Free Syrian Army, all the groups who were actually forming the Supreme Military Council, who are exclusively Salafi extremist groups. They left the Free Syrian Army and they formed their own Islamic Front. So they are all Salafi Islamist groups. It could be the Free Syrian Army or other groups in Syria. But they have different names. You have some of them fighting under al-Nusra, some of them fighting under ISIL, some of them under the Islamic Front. The Free Syrian Army is only, a franchise, a name that was given to them to bring those groups and kind of try to tell them, if you want money or help, you have to come through us. So they can kind of have certain control over them. But it's completely out of control.
Mr. Al-Assad, thank you very much indeed for joining us.
Thank you very much. Thank you.